Alright, I know it's been a few weeks, but today I'm finally ready to dive back into my ranking of my top 30 favorite films of all time. So this is going to be number 2, part 2. We're going to be doing numbers 20 through 11. Like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. Let me know your thoughts down below on what you think of these rankings. And if you're new, check out the rest of the channel and let me know what you think. Let's dive into my favorite films. Part 2. In at number 20, kicking off the list, is Interstellar. One of probably 5 Nolan movies that are going to be on this list, inevitably, but that's not my fault. Shouldn't be such a good director. I love this movie. Obviously, I love every movie on this list. It's my top 30 of all time, so that's without saying. But I'm a sucker for space exploration movies and space sci-fi movies. I'm also a sucker for movies that dive deep into what our humanity is. Where do we come from? Where is our race going? What is destined to happen to our species and this planet? And can we one day explore the cosmos? Those are questions that I've always pondered, as long as I can remember, and I love movies that bring that to light. And this movie has all of that. And it also has a phenomenal score, incredible direction, impeccable visuals, very good cinematography, and just very good visual effects all around. Has a fantastic cast, like most every Nolan directed movie, and the acting and performances are just insane. I know Matthew McConaughey, he didn't even get nominated for this movie, but his performance in this movie is, I think, goes unnoticed when people talk about, the best performances he's had in his career. Everyone knows Dallas Buyers Club because he won the Oscar for Best Actor for Dallas Buyers Club, and rightfully so. But I think his performance in this film is very underappreciated, and all the rest of the cast is great too. Anne Hathaway's fantastic, Jessica Chastain's fantastic, Matt Damon's good in the limited role that he has. Everybody in this film, and it's just such a deep movie. I know the big complaint about this film, which never made a lot of sense to me, I've never found it to be an issue, but the big complaint about this film is that it gets too emotional at times in a fashion that comes off as corny, which, again, I've never felt. I think the idea that our capacity for love permeates space and time, and in the end, it's ultimately what saves humanity, our love for one another, and not being willing to sacrifice an entire race of people to save a few. And that's really at the heart of this movie, and it's not just the love for one another, but it's also Cooper, his love for his daughter, that ultimately helps him and Murphy figure out a way to save the human race. And I think that's an interesting idea, and I think it's a very, very, I guess, deeply emotional one that I enjoy. A lot of people, like I said, find it very corny. I never understood that, especially when it comes to Nolan, because oftentimes the theme, well, I guess the common negative that a lot of people throw at his direction, his writing, and his films is that you can never get emotionally attached to his characters because his movies tend to revolve more around an event or the plot more than it does around a character-driven narrative. And so he goes out and makes this movie that is very emotional between its characters, and he finally creates some emotional depth to the characters in his film, which, again, this isn't a complaint that I have, but it is a common theme that you see thrown around when his movies premiere. So he finally addresses that, and then you know, and then the critics come after him because they think it's too emotionally horny or silly. And it's like, okay, well, you can't have it both ways, you know? So, I don't know. I don't get it. It never made sense to me. Um, so the action set pieces in this movie are fantastic. When Cooper is trying to dock back to the space station before Dr. Mann can, that whole sequence is epic and insane. I mean, a lot of these scenes in this movie just stick out when you go back and think about this film. When Cooper is traversing the Tesseract area to try and communicate with Murphy, and it turns out he was her ghost the whole time. Great revelation. I mean, Nolan is the king of making these twists and turns in his movies, to be honest, and they're not absent from this film at all. I just think this film is great. In my opinion, like, it's not my favorite Nolan film, because I think sometimes emotionally it's hard to get through. It's hard to rewatch. Let me take that back. Take a step back. It's very rewatchable, but emotionally it's hard to want to sit through this movie time and time again. And I have rewatched it, obviously, but it's once in every few years for me. So it's not my favorite in that respect. But I will say, in terms of the quality of movies, honest to God, I think Interstellar is Nolan's masterpiece. But that's just my opinion. In at number 19 is '11, the remake, not that shitty Frank Sinatra Rat Pack one. That's just a nothing burger. The '11 from what, like 2000? I think it's 2001. This movie is incredible. It just oozes coolness out of every ounce of its being. It might be the coolest film aesthetic ever made. The cast is insane. So many A-listers in this cast, and everybody sort of gets their due. It's kind of like just like the normal man's Avengers Endgame, honestly. Just this ridiculous cast, and every single one gets a part to play in this insanely eloquent heist that they pull off, and it's so good. It's just a great mixture of drama, comedy, there's a love story thrown in there, a heist film, just incredible, especially for its time. I could rewatch this movie every other day, honestly. It's so good. There's so many, like, just awesome aspects about this film. The visuals, Soderbergh's direction, just the way he navigates through these casinos in Vegas, and just like the aesthetic he uses, it's amazing. The color grading, everything. It all fits together so cohesively, and it's so good. And the music, oh my god. It's just every piece and part of this movie works extremely well together, and this is one that I could just rewatch over and over and over. At number 18 is Gone Baby Gone. Now, this is a movie that I feel like does not get the acknowledgement that it deserves, which is a shame, because it's a very, very good film. It's a great sort of crime thriller. I actually don't know a lot of people outside of my close circle of friends that are into movies that have actually seen this. I know it did relatively well when it came out. It's directed by Ben Affleck and stars his brother Casey, and this is one of those movies I feel that kind of put Casey Affleck on the map as a leading man. Another great cast: Morgan Freeman, Ed Harris, Michelle Monaghan. I mean, this movie is fantastic. It's a great crime movie. It's a great drama. There's a few twists and turns that you really don't see coming. An emotionally charged ending that kind of just stops you in your tracks, and this is one of those movies that you come out of and you're like, I don't know if we made the right decision here, because you're just left thinking about like how this movie ends and the things that transpired to get to this spot, and you don't know which main character you sort of align with, because it's such a issue, and it's one that really makes you go back and forth with yourself in your head on. The performances are fantastic. The writing is great. The direction, great. This is a very underrated film, and it deserves more praise. So if you haven't seen it, I highly, highly recommend. At number 17 is Sicario. In my opinion, the second best modern Western that has been made, outside of another one that's going to be higher up on this list. This movie's fantastic. A lot of twists and turns. Performances are off the chart, especially Benicio del Toro, one of my favorite actors. I mean, the cast in this film is Josh Brolin and Del Toro, two of my favorite actors, not just working today, but of all time. Emily Blunt, one of my favorite actresses of all time, so talented. Daniel Kaluuya's in there before he became like a star. A lot of other actors show up that you'll all know. Denis Villeneuve, my second favorite director of all time behind Nolan, just incredible here. Taylor Sheridan, some of his best screenwriting he's ever done, in my opinion, and it is so good. Action-packed, full of drama, full of just crushing emotion, and like I said, some crazy twists and turns that you don't really ever see coming. Very rewatchable, and yeah, like I said, this movie is truly a modern Western, and you know what? I know this movie got praised when it came out, deservedly so, but like, I can't remember if this ever got nominated for anything. Not like I give a shit, because I think all those award ceremonies are horseshit anyway. They always nominate the wrong stuff that nobody really cares about, in my opinion. But like, this movie really, like, I feel like, obviously audiences and critics loved it, but I just feel like it never got the awards recognition that it obviously deserved. But anyway, Sicario, great movie. Nolan back at it again for number 16, The Prestige. Oh, I love this movie. This is like, I feel like one of the twistiest Nolan films. It's just like twist after twist after twist. It's funny, I remember seeing this movie in the theater with two of my brothers and my dad. My dad likes movies, but he's very much like, he likes movies about real stuff, and like he's very into like all the old Clint Eastwood westerns and John Wayne westerns and things like that. He's very particular about his movies. He had no idea what the fuck was going on this entire movie, but like, it was, me and my brothers enjoyed it. My dad was just like, but so good. I don't know. That's just a fun memory of this film for me. But you know, I mean, some of Nolan's best writing and directing, I think. Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale bring their A game. So does Scarlett Johansson. That ending monologue with Michael Caine just talking about how the greatest aspect of the magic trick isn't making something disappear, it's bringing it back. And like, having that monologue run parallel over the top of Christian Bale revealing himself to his daughter, it's just like, it's one of those Nolan endings that just hits you in the feels every time, and you're like, holy shit. And like, this entire movie, you never know what's real, what's fake. You never know really who to root for, because honestly, both of these guys are kinds of pieces of shit. But then just like, at some point you're like, all right, well, you know, Hugh Jackman is kind of the bigger piece of shit, but like, this movie is just a crazy, just, it's just a fight of like, who has the bigger ego. It's just like, you shouldn't love it, but you do, because you just love watching these guys duke it out, sabotage each other, and like, it's, I don't know, it's great. It's an awesome movie, and I love it. In at number 15, yep, we're on 15. In at number 15 is Toy Story 2. Honestly, all of these Toy Story movies are good, in my opinion. I think every single one of them is compelling in their own right. They're great, not just for kids, but for adults. I think Toy Story 2 is the most entertaining for me. I think it has jokes in the series, mainly for adults. And this one holds a special place in my heart because this is the first movie I ever saw in a movie theater, which is, you know, that's special for someone who, one of their passions in their life is movies and watching movies, reviewing movies, etc. And this movie's just, it's great. Woody's story, him being torn between wanting to stay with Andy and wanting to run off with this new band of friends he's made and become this, you know, this icon that he didn't know he was. Buzz going after him to repay the debt that he owes is great, and it's just hilarious. This movie's hilarious. I've watched it more times than I can count, and even in the past few months, because my son is just insanely into this whole quadrilogy now. He got so many Toy Story toys for Christmas. I have no idea where we're gonna put him, but it's cool because it's something. He's at this age where I can bond with him over movies like this, and it's amazing. This movie, in my opinion, is not only one of the best animated movies of all time, but I think it is one of the best. It's a part of one of the best movie franchises ever. It's definitely one of the most consistent movie franchises, but there's just so much to love about this movie, not just for kids, but for adults as well. In at number 14 is Skyfall, and I know I've heard it before. It's just The Dark Knight. Fine, it is. It's very comparable. The stories, the narratives, whatever. I don't care. This movie is so much fun. It's so goddamn entertaining. I don't think it's the best Bond movie. Let me clarify that. I think Casino Royale through and through is probably the best Bond film. It's just so much fun. It has some of the best action sequences in the Craig era of this franchise, I think. Craig, he gives his all in every single one of these movies, even Quantum of Solace, which is for sure the worst one of the bunch. But he commits so much to this character, and he's so good. All the action scenes, all the scenes that ask him to be serious, all the scenes he's just giving the most dry humor you've ever seen. He does everything for this franchise, and it's fantastic. The villain's great. I mean, Javier Bardem just chews up every piece of scenery he's in. I think it sucks that you had to kill off Judi Dench's M, but I think it's something that needed to happen for this franchise to continue and not become stale, so I think that was a risky but fantastic decision by the writers and Sam Mendes, who is, a very good director, one of my favorites of all time. This movie is visually stunning. Roger Deakins did the cinematography for this. Fantastic. Just a legend. And the narrative is just twisty, turny. The assault on Bond's childhood home. Incredible whole sequence. Getting more of Bond's backstory as an orphan and what happened to his parents and how M pretty much sought him out because orphans make the best spies. It just illuminates so much of this character we never really understood yet, and it's a very, very fun movie. In at 13 is The Departed. Yes, Scorsese has better films than this one, for sure, but I think this is one of his most entertaining films. It's so good. The cast is amazing, and they all give just all-star performances between Leo and Matt Damon. Jack Nicholson is off the chain in this movie, just fucking sniffing around like a rat and doing weird shit that only Jack Nicholson can do, and he's incredible to watch. Mark Wahlberg, who I think is the dude does a lot of bad movies. He's not the greatest actor in the world, but for whatever reason, maybe just because this movie just permeates so much Boston inside of it that he just found it within himself to give the best performance of his career, because it really is, and he's the hero of this movie ultimately. So even people like Mark Wahlberg shine here. And then you got Martin Sheen, I think honestly probably the best actor ever never to win an Academy Award. I mean, his career spans decades. He's been in so many films. He's so good in everything he does, and he's awesome here as this sort of mentor / father figure to Leo, trying to do everything he can to protect him, but also to get their guy. And it's so good, especially the back end when everything just goes off the rails. And I mean, they pull no punches. Never the first time I saw this movie did I think, that Leo was going to die, and the way he did as well. And then just everybody starts getting picked off. It just it's such a wild and crazy crime epic, and it's just so goddamn good. At number 12 is Moneyball, probably my favorite sports film ever made. Actually, it is, because it's the only sports film I have on this list. So, yeah, this movie's great. It's one that, like, I love sports. I love sports movies. I will be the first to admit that a lot of them are just like schlock. They're just feel good for the most part. Um, Going into this one, I was very curious because it was marketed as not like it was marketed. I take that back. It was marketed as a feel good sports drama, but also you knew based on the cast involved, based on Aaron Sorkin being the writer, who is a prolific screenwriter, and based on the director, that this was going to be different. And I was curious going in because of the story behind it, based on baseball analytics and changing the entire industry of how we scout baseball players, how we build a team, not doing it around talent that we see, but around the factors that only some people know how to really quantify. And that's an interesting idea to me. And then you just bring in this all-star cast of like Philip Seymour Hoffman, Brad Pitt, Robin Wright, Jonah Hill, who at the time like was not known for his dramatic performances. I'm pretty sure this is his big break in that respect. And everybody is so incredible. I mean, Brad Pitt, my favorite actor, gives arguably the best performances of his career in this movie. It's just so different to what he normally does. It's just such a quiet and reserved, contemplative, thoughtful performance, and he's just this sort of frustrated and vulnerable guy who's just trying to achieve this one goal that just seems so impossible. And at the end, they don't do it. They don't pull it off. And I enjoy that aspect because almost every sports drama you watch, it's always just like, oh, they did it. They won the championship or whatever. In this one, they don't. I mean, they lose. And that's the reality of it. Sometimes even when you do everything right and put all the chips in the right spot, it doesn't always pay off. But it doesn't take away from how feel good this movie actually is. I mean, when Jonah Hill's character brings him into his office and says, look, we fucking lost. Everybody knows we lost. It didn't work out. But look what you did. And you truly changed the game of baseball. If you didn't have a GM in the MLB who was willing to put their neck on the line to totally revamp how they go about this business, this may have never happened. I mean, teams have won World Series because of this concept. The Red Sox won the World Series because of this concept. My favorite team, Cleveland, went to the World Series with Terry Francona, utilizing this concept. And it's crazy. I mean, it's crazy that you can have a sports drama where things don't turn out the way that everyone wants them to, but yet you still walk away saying like, wow, that was pretty cool. At number 11 is Wedding Crashers. My favorite comedy of all time. I think one of the last great comedies made. There's not a lot of like through and through comedies anymore, and it's a shame. But this one is hilarious. I honestly might be my most quoted movie of all time. Me and my brothers quote this movie so much. People probably just get so pissed off about it, like our wives. But it's so good. So many one-liners that are just hilarious that you can just throw into any situation. Owen Wilson and Vince Vaughn are just like a magical pairing when they're on screen together. Their banter, their chemistry, everything. The plot of this movie is so ridiculous, like it's not really that believable, but it's just like you go along with it and it's so funny. These guys just sort of weasel their way into these weddings, and this one in particular, they weasel their way into this family and their beach house, and they go there and spend the week with them and whatnot, and it's just, they both get themselves into insanely stupid situations, but it's hilarious, and it's great. This is one of those movies, like, I remember it came out, like, right before, not to get dark, but, like, before my parents' divorce, and this is one of those movies that, like, helped me get through that. Like, I would just flip it on at night when I was just, like, not feeling it, and it would just like cheer me up immediately. I fell asleep watching this movie so many times in my early teenage years just because like I was just like in a place I didn't want to be. But this movie always brought me out of it because it's just so funny, and there's so many sequences that just have you like laughing your ass off. And Such a good cast for a comedy movie too. Like outside of Wilson and Vaughn, you got Christopher Walken, a legend. You got Bradley Cooper before he was well known, playing just a complete asshole in this movie, but he's great at it. And then you got Rachel McAdams, who's a fantastic actress, my favorites. It's so funny, it's so good, and it kind of sparked this like run of these Wilson Vaughn movie pairings, but they were just never, none of them just ever lived up to the success or like the highs of this one, which makes this one that more special. But it's a great comedy, great movie, and my number 11 favorite film of all time. That's it for part 2 of this list. If you enjoyed it, great. Leave a comment down below, let me know what you think, and watch out for the next one.